Recording.
All right, we are live at the Bowen and on Zoom, and no guarantees about what kind of technical issues we're going to have. We've already had some, but I think we may be good. So I want to welcome everybody here tonight to our June meeting, our third meeting here at the Bowen. David Akoubian is our guest tonight, and he's going to be talking about landscape photography, and we're hoping his show will work. We got some business. Our photo theme tonight was perspective. I think we had 9 entries for that. And we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start with our usual club business and talk about events. David will do his presentation, and then we'll do our photo challenge at the end. So as usual, you can pay, if you're not a paid member, you can pay your club dues at any time, $20 for individual or $30 for family. You can see the different benefits here. Mainly paid members get a few more benefits. We have a free mentorship program, free workshops. But if you're not a paid member, you can still come to the meetings. You can still attend most club trips, but a lot of extra benefits if you're a paid member. And one of those benefits is this next thing right here, our North Georgia Photography Club annual picnic. We haven't done it the last 2 years. There was this pandemic going on. You might have read about it. It was in all the papers. But we're tentatively going to have it in September or October, and we're probably going to do it at Lake Lanier instead of up North Georgia mountains, try to keep it a little bit closer. But we do need volunteers to help with planning it, doing the cooking. I've discussed this a little bit with the planning committee, and a lot of us have a lot of commitments. We can't do this by ourselves. So we need your help. If you're willing to help with the planning, if you're willing to help with grilling, please contact me and let me know. If we don't get volunteers to help us out with this, we're not going to be able to do it. So we're kind of counting on you to help us out with that. The club will be paying for all the food. So there'll be no cost for anybody, but we do need your help in planning. We do have some trips coming up. Let Dick, Dick doesn't want to talk about it. This is no fun. I can't see the people at home.
The first thing is I've been wanting to go to Gibbs Gardens, so I put it on the calendar, and then Mother Nature decided to heat the thing up. So right now I've got it for June 25th. That's assuming the weather breaks at least a little bit for us. I am not anxious to wander around that garden at 100 degrees. So I'm hoping. And on July 9th, go over to the Automobile Museum in Cartersville. We'll do that regardless of weather because it's indoors and air conditioned. It does cost $15. I tried to do a Milky Way shoot in August or September, but that is going to be up to other people to decide on where and when exactly. But it will be a late night, 10, 11 o'clock night thing, no doubt. We'll go to the Dragon Con parade, assuming that they do it open to the public this year, which I think they will. And then sometime in October, November, we will go out looking for fall color. I'm open to suggestions for where and when exactly. My personal preference right now, I think, would be go over in the Warwick, Wendell, Clayton area. But that's subject to change. Anybody's got a good idea? Let me know.
And if you have ideas for any other trips, let us know. We may throw other stuff in there. So just let us know and we'll do it. We have part 2 of our workshop with Anna DeStefano coming up a week from Sunday. So I don't know how many of you were online last night to watch that. I'll have a video posted sometime this weekend if you missed it. But part 2 of becoming a more intuitive photographer will be at the State Botanical Gardens of Georgia in Athens. We'll get that posted next week with directions and information. The gardens are free. Anna's gonna tell us where we're supposed to park and where we're supposed to meet her, but we're gonna start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Hope that we can beat the heat and the crowds. So that should be fun. And so now, if we get this to work correctly, we're gonna do our presentation with David Akoubian. So hang on just a second, and let's see if I can share the screen for that. I should wear my other glasses so I can see the screen. Start on slide 2. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. So you get to miss the first 2 slides, but I understand these were really very beautiful, fantastic pictures. So anyways, yeah, if you want to use the pointer. Yeah, look, we can trade seats or whatever. And I've asked David to stay near the microphone because I know last time people at home couldn't hear. So.
Just want to say hi. I'm waving to the people here in the room. For those of you who are going to hear me cough occasionally, I have a summer cold, so nobody in the room needs to worry. You folks online, if it goes viral, I don't know if that's good or bad, so it's up to you guys on that one. But anyway, I just have a head cold. I do that every summer. So for those of you that don't know me or know anything about my photography, I started really photographing in 1972 when my father put a camera in my hand because he was a little worried about me. I was somewhat of an introvert. I didn't really get along with other people. I really don't still, but you don't need to worry about that. And he signed me up for the annual staff in my high school. And little did he realize that it was working against him, because instead of actually taking pictures of people, I was just simply taking pictures of bugs and frogs and other stuff around our house in the woods. I took a trip in 1976 to Grand Teton National Park and sort of realized at that point that, I didn't know what a nature photographer was. I didn't know they existed, but I knew that I just wanted to be outdoors and I wanted to take pictures. So at the time I was working as an illustrator to become an illustrator. Went to college for art, gave that up, and I started doing just photography. I think that now I would be diagnosed with ADHD or attention span, something or another, and I'd be in all kinds of drugs. And, back then it was just, just staring out the window, wanting to be someplace else. So I joined the Marine Corps in 1986. I got out in 1992, and I decided that I needed to do something productive and adult-like with my life. So I decided to become a photographer. I know a lot of people are saying that's not really adult-like, but I started doing portraits and weddings, and I see Richard Clark was one of the faces and names on the call. Richard and I worked together with Life Touch doing school portraits and senior portraits. And I decided to give myself a gift one year, and I decided I was going to go to a workshop put on by the Great American Photography Weekends in Gatlinburg, and the guest speaker was John Shaw. And while I was at that event, they had a contest that if you won the contest, you were going to be published in Outdoor Photographer. You would get all this great recognition, and I envisioned myself winning. Well, I didn't win, but I did get a job offer out of the whole workshop. And the opportunity for me was I would be traveling the country with John Shaw and Art Wolfe and Galen Rao and Brian Peterson and the who's who of nature photography. So I did that for almost 3 years before I came back to the Atlanta area, and I was actually working with the Olympics at that time. Then I hit a little bit of a glitch in the road. In 1999, if anyone was in my classes, they would remember my famous statement where I said, do not fall into this digital photography craze, for it is nothing more than a passing fancy. And I said it with conviction, just like that. Because at the time, I mean, I'm holding a Sony Mavic and a floppy disk, and I'm putting it in, and how is that going to replace my Fujichrome Velvia? So 2002, I realized the error of my statement and ways, and I started shooting digital, and I started teaching again in 2005. And at that time became one of Tamron's image masters or professionals. And I think now, though, that given an opportunity to go back to film, I wouldn't do that. I feel that from my days as an illustrator, film couldn't really meet my vision, whereas digital photography really does. It gives me more of an opportunity to embrace the things that I see in my mind that film could not see. I don't do a lot of processing on images, but film just doesn't have that range that I needed. So that's where we're at now. Now I do workshops on my own. I do them with Tamron, and I do them with this guy in Alabama named Cecil Holmes. Together, we call ourselves Nature and Focus Photography Workshops. This image that you see on the screen, I'm going to say hi to Butter. Hey, Butter. I'll say hi to her. Hey, Butter. So the image that you see on the screen is from the Oregon coast. It's called Strawberry Hill. And I do some workshops as well with the out of Chicago people.
We don't see an image on the screen.
You don't see anything on the screen.
We see your files.
You see just the one file?
No, your whole list of files.
Give us a second here. I'm calling in the IT department.
Yeah, we apologize that the IT department is here. All right.
You can play with better, so.
All right.
You may need to open PowerPoint.
It's just JPEGs.
Double click the first one.
What we need is that other.
Yeah, let's see. Let me see if we go.
Screen sharing.
Yeah, go to the beside the. Okay, there we go. Bottom maybe.
Where's the share options? That's not it.
Advanced sharing options, maybe.
There's that.
See, right there.
Okay. Oh, that's not it. Trying to find the same setting that I used before.
Are you using Mike's laptop?
Yes.
We apologize. If somebody wants to buy me a new laptop. All right. That's right. Dick says price is no object on the new laptop. I'll even take a Mac. I've never used one before. Yeah. All right.
This is what they're seeing.
Yeah, we need to change. There's a setting here that allows you to change it so that.
Let's see.
I have a copy of it too.
Let's do those video settings. I know that's going to be different. Stop the share for a minute.
All right.
All right.
Hi, everybody. All right. I'll edit this out again later. All right. So when you share the screen. Okay. Share.
Click on that.
This one?
Yeah.
I think that's the one we had.
Yeah. Double click on it and then hit share on that.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. How's that look?
It's good.
All right,
All
let's see if
right.
that works.
Much better.
All right. Well, now you guys are gonna like, I can't,
That took less than 7 minutes. Last month it was 7 minutes.
I can't hide this stuff now. Yeah. Oh, boy. You guys that aren't here, you're lucky because I got a rough crowd in here. There's a bag of tomatoes that are sitting on each chair. So the image now that you're seeing is Strawberry Hill in the Oregon coast. And this is just an early morning. You'll find that if you ever watch the processing that I do, it's very minimal. I try to do as much as I can in the camera when I'm actually creating the image. So this is very, very little work on this. Now let's see if this works. Oh, that's the wrong way. Did you see a different image on there now? Okay, all right. So what makes a landscape image successful? And really there's a different series of images here. I've been teaching now for almost 30 years. And my pet peeve with teaching is people are critical of their own work because they compare themselves unfairly with other photographers. And you need to understand that first and foremost, when you go outside, what looks good to you? If it looks good to you, it's a successful image. Don't sit there and compare yourself with another photographer in the club, for instance. If you're going to make a comparison and judge your work as its success, compare it to what you did a year ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago. If you start to do that, you'll find that it gets to be more fun. Photography should be fun, unlike golf. It should be something you enjoy going out and doing. And there's a couple golfers in here, and I just saw the little snicker from one of them. But the other thing that makes a landscape image successful is you're controlling what the viewer sees. You know, we are simply, when I do photography versus illustrating, I'm simply changing the median of presentation. As a painter, I could arrange the elements any way that I wanted to. As a photographer, I'm limited as to what lens I can use, the angle of view, the light, and a bunch of other things that go into that equation. But a successful landscape image for a photographer is when you arrange the elements inside of your frame and you get the viewer's attention and you walk them through the frame successfully. That what they see first is what you want them to see, what they see second is there, then what they see lastly is also there. So hopefully that'll make sense a little bit as we go through. But again, getting the viewer's attention and controlling it as they view the image. Excuse me for coughing again. It's going to happen several times. So I'll apologize now and then at the end of the whole thing. So this is an image. It's a place called the Miller House in Grand Teton National Park. And what I did in this image is I wanted you to do several things. I wanted you to put yourself in this house. That I wanted you to look and say, this is some place that I would like to be. And then as you start to look, you go, well, why would I want to be there? Well, I've got this beautiful view of the Grand Teton, and the Teton mountain range behind me. So what I'm doing is I'm inviting you in and I'm encouraging you to see everything that's there. You're going to hear me refer to the rule of thirds and PowerPoints and all these great things that I truly think are important to understand, but it's more important to understand you need to break those rules as often as possible because it doesn't always make the image look right. It gives you some guidelines, and we're going to go into why those guidelines work a little bit as well. So the gear that you need to be a landscape photographer, preferably, you need a camera and a lens, first and foremost. A lot of people use their cell phone. Hey, cell phones are doing great jobs, and you can actually get some great images with them. I use a tripod for almost everything that I do because I like that steadiness. It's kind of interesting because I hear some of the photographers that, I grew up listening to, and they talk about now, they don't shoot at ISO 100. They shoot at ISO 1600 so they can handhold for sunrises. And it just makes me cringe because, I still think of the grain and everything, and I know software can take a lot of that out. But for me, I'm in my comfort zone when I'm looking at an area, set up my tripod, and I can move around and then make a decision without having that camera in my hand, because with that camera in my hand, I tend to create an image and then I'm satisfied with it. But if I have to work it a little bit and I have to move, then I start to evaluate where I'm at. So that's why I like a tripod. I use a wireless remote. And the only filters that I use typically are neutral density filters, circular polarizers. I used to use a lot of the graduated neutral density filters, but now so much of that is more easily done inside of Lightroom that I leave those filters at home. So when I look at the different types of landscape photography, I break it into 3 categories: wide angle landscapes, standard lens, and then a telephoto. I think most of the people are close to my age, and you probably remember the magazine Arizona Highways and David Munch. David Munch used to take wide angle and ultra wide angle lenses, and he used to jam it down into an object in the foreground. And then that may not even be the subject, but that is what caught the viewer's attention. Then he arranged things by changing position or angle of view to bring other things in, and something else in the image was typically the subject. So I like that style. It's called asymmetrical photography. Asymmetrical is where you're creating some type of visual imbalance. You're making it so it's almost an uncomfortable feeling visually. And why? Because you're going to introduce other elements into the frame that give it some balance. Symmetrical photography, which is often referred to as bullseye, means it's balanced left to right and top to bottom. So if you've got a circular object, you stick in the middle of the frame, give it a square crop, that's a perfect symmetrical image. With the asymmetrical, you're purposely causing that imbalance in the frame. This is one of my favorite things that I do. Is I love to get flowers in the foreground and jam that lens into the flowers when possible. And then that mountain scene in the background with the beautiful light hitting the Grand Teton, it's sort of a secondary part of the image, but at the same time, visually, that's where you're going to end up. And that's where I want you to end up. So you see the flowers first, then you start to study the frame and you end up with the flowers, the mountain in the background. And I've got a cough drop in my mouth, so that's why I'm sort of like, I should swallow it, but I'll choke on it. So this is an area of Iceland called Vesterhorn, and the sand in the foreground with the grass on top, again, is just simply there so it grabs the viewer's attention. By no means is that the subject of the image, but it's meant to get the viewer's attention. And then you start to study the repetition of the hills behind it, and then eventually get back to the mountains in the background. So one thing that I will mention to you, that if you want to start doing wide angle photography or any landscape photography, attention to detail is critical. And this is one of the images that I used as an example, because again, I've got a wide angle lens, in this case, 17 millimeter. I've raised it up really high and I'm trying to cover the top of the fern. But if you look between the big fern and then the row of ferns behind it, there's no merger in the leaves from the fronds of the fern. So what I'm doing is, because I'm inviting you into the frame, I want to give you a clear path, and I can do this for people here in the room. I'm giving you a clear path between that fern and the row of ferns behind it. Because not only do I want you to walk in visually, I want you to feel that you can walk in physically. So you go to explore, you walk into those ferns, you cross through, you go through the birches, and then eventually work your way back to the other ferns. And again, getting high enough that I've given some separation between that first row of ferns and the ferns behind it, because I'm giving you different elements that you work your way through visually and physically. So landscapes with the standard lens. This is down in Apalachicola, Florida, after Hurricane Matthew. I just thought it was neat. Someone down there had placed this flag on one of the pylons down there. And, this is more of, with a standard lens, I tend to isolate things a little bit. With the wide angle, I tend to tell a story. With the standard lens, I'm isolating the subject and I'm bringing in other elements, which are the pylons, the color in the sky, and the reflection. But I thought it was kind of neat. I slowed the shutter down just enough to show that there was some movement in the flag as well. The sun is actually rising behind it, so that's why you have that glow that's there in the middle of the flag. This is a shrimper that is on 2 Mile outside of Apalachicola. And it's one of those things that Apalachicola used to be one of the greatest places to do workshops, the greatest place to go down and photograph. But the state of Florida decided a couple of years ago to spend $30 million cleaning up all the dilapidated boats. They never asked a photographer if that was a good idea, because if they had, we would have all said no. They finished that whole project this past year by removing the Donna Kay from Cape San Blas. And, now you can't find dilapidated boats. Apalachicola Bay is actually closed for 3 more years for oyster harvesting because of several reasons. The mixture of water that comes in down the Apalachicola River is too much fresh water, not enough salt water. So the oysters can't breed and grow properly. They over harvested when Katrina came in, when there was the Gulf spill and a bunch of other things. So they've closed it for 5 years, hopefully rebuilding the oyster industry. So we'll see. But removing those boats, I think that was one of the small things they could have done. And it's the last thing they should have done, but it was the first thing instead. Oops. There we go. This is Delicate Arch from the other side of the bowl. If you've ever been up there, it's just a big bowl that's there. This is looking through at the LaSalle Mountains in the background. This is with a 50mm lens. So landscapes with a telephoto lens. What I like to do with the telephoto lens, well, a wide angle lens does what's a visual effect called decompression. It makes you feel like there's a greater distance between your foreground and background. The opposite of that is compression, where a telephoto lens makes you feel the things in the foreground are closer than they are to the background. So that's what I like to use telephoto lens for. In this case, I'm photographing the lighthouse in St. George Island. I used my app Photo Pills to determine when the moon would appear in the lighthouse itself. And I went ahead and just simply waited, got eaten by mosquitoes, and then did the image with a 600mm lens. Another instance is in Alaska in Resurrection Bay. These spires in this cove, what I did is used a long lens from a boat, and I wanted to shoot at a higher f-stop. So it's a f11 or f16, because I wanted you to see the detail that's in the background, but at the same time, realize that there's this depth between the two. So I didn't want to bring them so close together. So the telephoto lens compressed that scene. The larger depth of field gave me enough detail in the background for you to determine what was there. So I probably catch a lot of grief from some of the professional nature photographers because I love to use all-in-one lenses. I can remember back in my early days of photography, carrying 10 lenses with me, and my backpack was 70 pounds. Now I can carry, like my trip that I go to Alaska this week, I'll be carrying 2 camera bodies and 3 lenses, and it'll be under 20 pounds. So for me, that's a great difference. But one of those lenses that I'll carry is going to be an all-in-one lens. It's a wide angle to telephoto. The advantage of that is multifaceted. If the light changes quickly and I need to change focal lengths, I can simply zoom in and do that without having to take the lens off, put a new lens on, run the risk of bugs getting into, because if you ever photograph out west, mosquitoes are an issue, flies are an issue. And back in the film days, and Barry can tell you this because I brought cameras into Barry, that it would squish a mosquito with the mirror and you'd have to get it cleaned off of it. So with, an all-in-one, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about dust. You don't have to worry about water. You don't have to worry about any of that. So this was the scene one evening at Oxbow Bend. The arrowleaf balsam root in the foreground. The sky was starting to get this beautiful color. There was no wind. There was a beautiful reflection. But as you can see, the wind picked up. And the wind destroyed any reflection and chance of color that we would have in this situation. So using an all-in-one, in this case, it was a 16-300 on a crop sensor body, I simply zoomed in because the light that was hitting the ground was absolutely incredible. Now, when you look at that with the 16, you don't even see that. That light lasted maybe 20 seconds. If you can change the lens and get recomposed quickly, then you're better than I am. So having that all in one lens really made it really easy to get that composition and not lose it. Excuse me. So another situation at the Hasita Head Lighthouse on the Oregon coast, and this fog moved in. I really love the light that you could get it in the bed and breakfast that's off to the right, and the light at the lighthouse. This is an 18-400. Simply zooming in after I did the one image just to the lighthouse and getting that light to come through the fog. This is a place that has become really special to me here quickly, Ossabaw Island down on the Georgia coast. This is sunrise on their Boneyard Beach. If you've ever been to Driftwood Beach on Jekyll Island, imagine Driftwood Beach times 100. And that's what you see on Ossabaw Island. So absolutely incredible. This is with the 35-150. This is at 35 millimeters. That's at 150 millimeters. So just simply being able to zoom in, not worry about the bugs, because trust me, there were a lot of bugs this morning on there. So I want to talk about elements and leading lines. Again, as an illustrator and a painter, I could simply take my paintbrush and I could paint anything I wanted to on that canvas. As a photographer, you can't do that. It's not that it's better or worse, it's just different. It makes you see things differently. And one thing that I use as a teaching tool, when people get stymied, I mean, just to show of hands in the room, you can raise your hands online if you want to. How many people have ever gotten to a point where you feel challenged in your photography? You feel like you're at a point where you're stuck, and all the hands are up pretty much, mine too. What I do, and I encourage people to do, is photography gets to be very comfortable for you. And part of that comfort is when you're photographing landscapes, you use one lens all the time. So to get out of that funk that you're in, put that lens away and get out something that's completely different. If you typically photograph with a 28-75, photograph with a 17-28, or photograph with a telephoto lens, but photograph the same things that you normally photograph. It forces you to see things differently. And when you see things differently, when you put that favorite lens back on, you start to notice different things that you didn't see a week before, a day before, an hour before. So force yourself to see things differently. And a lot of that with the elements can be something that definitely you start to see differently. This is a barn, John Moulton's barn on Mormon Row. And what I've done is I've taken a wide angle lens and I've gotten very, very close to that front post. I want you to see that post first, and then I want you those posts to lead you, or the rails to lead you into the frame, eventually to the door of the barn. A tip when you're photographing in the snow, start far away and then work your way in. Otherwise, you're going to be removing footprints constantly in Photoshop. And I'm speaking from experience. Sparks Lane, everyone that's been to Cades Cove photographs this. This is one of those images. When I set out to do a landscape image, I want to get the viewer's attention, but I want them to leave with a question mark in their mind. And that question mark is, what is down that road? It's foggy at the end of that road. What would happen if I walked down there? And it's not more of a frustration question. It's more of a curiosity. I want you to, have the viewer want more without having to, give them a reason to stop looking at it. So Sparks Lane, I love photographing in the fog because you can't see down that road. Anyone who's been down there, there's just a creek down at the end of the road. But for people that haven't been there, there's that mystique and that mysterious element as to what's down there. So I love to put that into the image. White Sands National Park. I love the leading lines that the sand creates. And we're gonna talk in a little bit about how light affects your image, because when I was in the Smokies, I heard some really famous photographers that were co-instructors at this. And I almost got frustrated because several of them made the statement there's no such thing as bad light. There's horrible light out there. And there's times that you just don't photograph. Being able to recognize horrible light is the key to being successful. You know, that you can go out and you can capture something in bad light and say it's good, but what's the old saying about putting lipstick on a pig? I mean, it's still a pig. So for me, I photograph early morning and late evening because I like the play of light and shadow. And I think that's just something that I think helps with the elements within your frame and the leading lines. And gosh, all the lines in the sand. One thing that I do recommend to people, if you ever go out to a place like White Sands, constantly turn around and look behind you. Not in case you're missing something, but to see which way you've come from, because it's very easy to get lost out there. What I'll do is when I'm walking a new trail, I'll stop every 100 yards, I turn around and I take a cell phone shot. So that way, when I'm walking back, I can look at the cell phone shot and say, okay, I'm on the right path. Because out in White Sands, if the wind is blowing, your footprints get covered up very, very quickly. And it's very easy to get displaced. If you didn't know, there's a lot of aliens that are wandering the dunes out there. It's near Roswell. And the last thing you want to do is think you're going out to photograph and get abducted by some aliens and get probed. You don't want that. You want to be able to make it back to your car safely. Yeah, this time, I don't remember though, because they erased your mind. This is the Jessup Trail in Acadia National Park in the Sur de Mont area. And what I did here is because I didn't have the fog, I simply did a radial filter. And then I took my dehaze slider and I just moved it to the left just a little bit. And then I just brought it down to about 25% opacity. So you could see the detail, but that question mark as to what is down that trail is still there. This is Dix Creek, just above Dahlonega. I love going up here and photographing. Number one, it's 30 minutes from home. But the other reason is there's always something there to photograph. And I love the log, how it leads you from the place that I'm at over to the right to the shoreline. Then you can follow the shoreline to the waterfall, or you can take the alternate route of following the Cascades to the left and then follow the shoreline up. So I love photographing slow exposures when I'm photographing water, because the slower the exposure, the more solid the line is going to be. And I use those lines as elements to lead you through a frame. If the water bubbles inside of the rapids, that's what create those white lines. If you're doing it really quickly, you notice those lines get very, very short. I tend to use a circular polarizer that has a 5-stop neutral density built into it. So it just helps me just automatically do that. This is in a place called Secret Canyon. And I'm not saying I'm not going to tell you the name of it. The name of it is Secret Canyon. I photographed in the Antelope Canyons in the Page, Arizona area many, many, many times. I used to go there when you would be the only person inside of those canyons. Now you're sharing with a couple hundred of your closest friends. And as a photographer, they let you get in, you put your tripod down, you've got about 30 seconds to a minute, and then they're moving you forward. Some of the exposures that I would do were a minute or 2 minutes long. So I just decided to explore other options. I found a guide in town that would take us to a place called Secret Canyon. And there was 4 of us in this canyon for 4 hours by ourselves, nobody else. And it cost us like $150 a piece. So to me, for my mental health, it was well worth it. Just the light was beautiful and the crowds are just nowhere near what they are with the big canyons. This is Tybee Island and Driftwood Beach. What I'm doing here is I'm using a wide angle lens and I'm getting down to this little log. This log was maybe 18 inches to 24 inches. And I'm close enough to that log that it distorts the view, makes it look really big. The tree in the background is fairly large, but again, that wide angle decompression changes what you see to what I want you to see. Then I've got that nice space between the two. And if you look, I'll almost follow the rule of thirds here, where the bottom third is that log, the upper third is the tree. The middle third is nothing more than a place for you to get from point A to point B. And I've used a slow exposure again and the reflection to lead you from the log in the foreground to the tree that's in the background. Yes, I'm laying in horse poop. But I think that the opportunity to to get a double rainbow above some horses is worth plopping down and having to ride in the back of the car because your wife says you're not getting in the front seat smelling like that. She volunteers at an equine therapy place, and we feed the horses on Saturday nights. This particular night, a thunderstorm came through. I saw the double rainbow. I always carry a camera with me. I ran back up, got the camera, and like I said, I just plopped down because I wanted that double rainbow above the two horses, or the four horses in this case. Gibbs Garden. I love to get into Gibbs Garden and just look at things that most people don't see. This is one of the maintenance roads by the visitor center. And everything that Jim Gibbs has done in there has an artistic basis for it. There's no straight lines inside of Gibbs Garden. Everything is curved. And he does that because he wants you to visually meander. He doesn't want you to get from point A to point B very quickly. He wants you to take your time and visually search things. And that's why he and I get along so well, is because I could recognize that right away. And as he and I talked my first time there, I remember him saying to me, we went to the Japanese gardens, and he said, do you know why nothing is a straight line here in the Japanese garden? I said, well, yes. I said, if you had straight lines, the evil spirits could come in. And he looked and he says, now, how did you know that? I said, well, I lived in Japan a year. And I said, I noticed that all of your paths and everything else curve. And I said, I really like that because it breaks up visually what you're seeing. And he looked at me and he said, you really get this. And from then on, we've had a great relationship. And, you know, I just enjoy sitting and talking with him and seeing the different things he does. But I showed him this image and he said, you realize that's a maintenance road. And I said, it's the best maintenance road I've ever seen, because the curve through those, the Yoshino cherries was just perfect. And, you know, that's the things I look for, is curves, how I can use those as elements in my image. So years ago, there was a study, and there's debate as to who actually did the study, and it doesn't matter. The results are what count. Excuse me. Drink a little water here. They believe that in the Western culture, when you talk about PowerPoints and the rule of thirds, that when you're looking at the PowerPoints, you've got, you know, the little tic-tac-toe board, that in the Western culture, because we read left to right, top to bottom, the strongest points were either the upper left or the lower right. And they say that to make your image successful visually, you should utilize those two PowerPoints more so than anything else. Now, I've never talked to anyone in the Asian culture that they do the opposite. They read from right to left to see if it's the opposite for them. But I think for me, visually, it tends to work better. This is placing this tree in Cades Cove in the lower left. This is placing it in the center. And this is placing it on the right. So I'm going to go back to the first one. And I think that when you look at this, for me anyway, I start on the left-hand side and I start to go to the right, and immediately I get to an open area. You hear the term negative space, which I love negative space, unless it's not doing anything for the image. And in this case, I feel like the tree has caught my attention and I'm going to the right and there's nothing there. So that's negative space that works against me. Placing it in the middle, I just see indecisiveness. Did I mean to put it on the left? Did I mean to put it on the right? Excuse me, gosh. But I think it leaves the viewer searching when it's in the middle like this. There's too much open space for it. Excuse me, golly. But when I put it in the lower right, your eye automatically starts in the upper left and you end up at that tree, which is what I want you to do. So I think that theory, that study that they did, actually holds some truth in their idea that we're starting in the upper left and we're ending in the lower right. Another example, excuse me just a second. I've got cough drops. I should put one in, but we'll see. So another example is on Hyatt Lane. I love leading lines and I love the repetition of leading lines. So what I've done here is I've set up on the right-hand side of Hyatt Lane and I'm looking down the lane. I've got all these lines that are carrying me up through the frame. But immediately I look under this tree at the end of the road and I don't have a clean view of that road. I have a feeling of visual, it's not comfortable to me. I don't feel like I'm smoothly moving through the frame. So what happens if I move a little bit to the right and center myself up in the road? Well, I think it's a little bit better, but I can see down the road and I can have a clear path. But I also feel at this point in time that I'm taking up too much space in the middle of the road. I should be more to the right or I should be more to the left, because where I'm at is I feel like I'm in no man's land. At the first one, you don't have that feeling because you've got that anchor of the grass on the right-hand side. But when I move over to the left, I feel like there's that emptiness that's there. So what happens if I move even further to the left? Now, all of a sudden, I've got a straight line to follow. That space that's over to the right is actually leading me into the frame versus being just empty space. I've got the fence post, I've got the grass, everything leads me through. Now I have a clear, unobstructed view of the road that goes over the hill. So when I go through those 3 frames again, pay attention especially to that road, how your eye is all of a sudden drawn to that road, and that's where you want to go visually. So keep those things in mind as you're photographing. You know, the great thing is digital film is cheap. Use all of it that you can use. I get so frustrated when photography instructors have absolutes. They say, absolutely, you should not bracket. Absolutely, you should not shoot more than 1 frame. Oh gosh, I hate it if you're shooting a bird in flight and you're just holding your shutter button down. Why? It's my camera. It's my card. I can do what I want. You know, it's not costing them any money, but what it is costing is if you don't get that shot, think about the frustration that you're going to have when you get home, the questions that are in your mind. What looks good for you, the moment you press that shutter, your vision may change 20 minutes later, a day later, a week later. So if you shoot everything, you can go back and then you ask yourself, why do I like this one better than I did initially with this one? That is the key to learning. You know, identifying what you like and learning how to repeat it. You know, once you do that, photography becomes more fun. Is it still frustrating? Absolutely. But you start to learn. John Shaw used to have a saying that the difference between a professional and an amateur photographer is a professional can repeat his mistakes often. You know, the opposite side of that is you repeat the good stuff just as often. So learn how to make mistakes and then to avoid them. Learn how to do things right and repeat those. And the only way that you do that is to make mistakes. If you never do anything wrong, take up golf, you know, honestly. So repetition and negative space. I really love the aspect of subliminally approaching the viewer by putting repetition into a frame to carry him through the frame. This is at a place called the Patriarch Tree in Grand Teton National Park. Probably you guys have never seen this tree before. It's very well hidden. There's not a lot of people that know where it's at. I just had been going there since the early 90s. It's about a mile hike. It's on very few maps, if any. But when the conditions are right, I go. And why I love it is 2 reasons. If you see those pine trees down to the lower left, I love how the repetition of those trees almost repeat the pattern of the peaks behind it. But then the tall tree, the bristlecone pine, which is called the Patriarch Tree, you can see the angle of the branches really continue with the angle of the mountains behind it. So I'm carrying you through the frame by the shapes and the patterns in the foreground. I didn't go out there with a set of hedge clippers. This is just something that's there. It's a great natural phenomenon. It's just a neat place, but I think it's one of those places that when you see this, it's really just cool to try to go and capture this image. And you can literally see from 50 years ago when the old Jenny Lake Loop Road or the Park Loop Road ran by this tree, you can still see imprints of tripod legs in the hard dirt that's there. This is on top of Cadillac Mountain. Here, what I've done is I've used the idea of an inverted repetition. The rock in the foreground, if you look at it, it's the exact opposite. It's the mirror image of the trees that are above it. You do stuff like this when you're really struggling to find something. It's foggy, it's raining, the wind's blowing, and you just look down and you happen to see a rock. That's when you sometimes come up with some of your favorite compositions. So repetition and minimalism as well. This is on the Kelly Grovont Road. And I did a square crop in this because there were some trees off to the sides that I felt took away from the composition. So I just, took them out of the image by cropping them out. But what I did is I really liked the one tree in the foreground, how it almost repeated with the two trees behind it. And you automatically want to go down that road between those two trees. Now, if you look on the image here, they can see it in here inside the room. The tree in the foreground and that first tree to the right of it, I've left space between the two. Again, that's that attention to detail that's going to make your image that much better, because if you've got that merger that's there, visually you stop at that point. What I'm doing is leaving that space, encouraging you to go down that road. Wow, this is as minimal as you get right here, or close to it. This is in Holly Country, Iceland. This is a yellow house behind the hotel we were staying. Whiteout conditions. There was one of my teachers, Rod Plank. He used to say, a photograph is worth 1,000 words. But if you use more than 3 to describe your image, you've wasted the viewer's time. And I think that this is yellow house and snow. So it's really 4 words, but I think he would forgive me in that. So minimalism helps your viewer stay focused on what you want them to see. Wow, that's pretty minimal. This is with a 600mm lens, picking a single tree out on a peak in one of the mountains in Grand Teton. This image was on St. George Island. I went out in the morning, I was photographing that where the pink and blue come together. That blue area is known as the Earth's shadow. It's actually the shadow of the Earth being thrown into the atmosphere. And I wanted to get this image with all the colors and just that black area. This entire image is negative space except for 0.1%. And it was unplanned that the fisherman walked in on the upper left. And at first I was a little bit frustrated because I was like, what do I have to do to get up in the morning and find a tidal pool and just simply wait for this color to be perfect? And this guy, there's 27 miles of beach and he parks right there. Then I realized everything in the image takes you to him. And I made some noise, the shutter went off and he heard it. And he's only probably 25, 30 feet away from me, but I'm using a 10mm lens in this situation. He came running over because he saw me laying in this puddle, or at the edge of this puddle, and he thought I had drowned. And he came running over saying, "Are you okay? You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" And he goes, "I thought you had drowned." He goes, "You're in a puddle." And I said, "No, I'm taking a picture." And I showed him and he goes, "I am so sorry, I'm in your frame. I'll get out of your frame." And I said, "No, actually go back." But I said, "It's a 30-second exposure, so stand real still." So he did the first 2 or 3 and I'm like, this is too easy. And he's like, "How we doing?" I'm going, "Good, good. Stay still. Hang on a couple more minutes." And finally I said, "Okay, I feel bad because I'm just torturing you at this point in time." Because you could see his fishing pole, he was getting bites and stuff. But whenever I do something like this, where I have someone in my frame, I go and I give them a card, I get their information. This image may mean nothing to him, but it may mean everything to him as well. So whenever I photograph someone in a frame, I do my best to get their name. I also get permission in case they are recognizable. That way I can still mark it with that image. So cityscapes, it's another type of landscape. This is the arch in St. Louis with a 15mm lens. I'm literally laying on the ground under my tripod, and I brought that top of the arch just to the point where it's at the top of my frame, but I still get the skyline of St. Louis in the background. the Brooklyn Bridge. So the sun stars that you see in there, those are natural. Those are not done with any type of filter. What you do to get that sun star is you have to have a single point source of light. In this case, it's street lights or some type of a light. Then you simply stop your lens all the way down to f/16, f/22, f/32, whatever it will do. What determines the number of spires in your sun star are the number of blades in your aperture. So if you've got a lens that has 8 rings or 8 blades in the aperture, you're going to get 8 spires. So using that logic, how many are you going to get if you have a lens with 9 aperture blades? 18, exactly. The reason being is the diffraction doubles it. On an even number, they fall back on themselves. An odd number, they go between it. So all of my lenses that I shoot with, Tamron uses all 9 aperture blades in their really good lenses. So I'm always going to have a lot of spires in my image. This is from the other side. This is the closest I've ever come to being arrested in New York. There's a sidewalk, and from one sidewalk to the next sidewalk is 3 feet. I built up speed. I jumped from one sidewalk to the other. One of the port police came over and said, I needed to jump back over, walk down the sidewalk to where the switchback was at, and come back because I'm not allowed to cross the grass. But I said I did it airily, in the air. And he said, it doesn't matter, jump back over and walk down. So he actually told me he was going to take me to jail if I didn't do it. So I did. And that was my point to him. Well, I'm already over here. If you made me go back over, I'm breaking the law twice. They didn't see it that way. So anyway, this is from just on the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge, looking at Manhattan. So landscape or wildlife image. I love doing close-ups of wildlife, but I also love doing environmental images of wildlife, where you include the environment that they're in. Because to me, it adds so much more. Number one, it's very marketable if you want to sell your images. Secondly, it gives the viewer a sense of place where they're at. This is off of a boat in Resurrection Bay, a pod of orcas, and I just simply minimized the amount of frame they took up, and I had the water, the shoreline, and the trees, so you had a sense of the environment that the orcas were in. Is it a landscape image or a wildlife image? I think it's both, absolutely. Another example, you can see the, I think, well, right underneath, I'm gonna have to move this for just a second. Let's see. See the bear? Ah, yeah, there's a bear there. I'll try to lower that down to there. So, oops. Yikes. This was about 11 o'clock at night. And this is the golden light that's up in Lake Clark in Alaska. And I simply wanted to rim light that bear. I did some close-up images with the 150 to 500. Then I threw my 28 to 200 on, and I did some images at about 50 millimeters. And I wanted to capture the environment that the bear is in. So to me, it just gives it a totally different look than just your typical bear image from Lake Clark. I have to click on here for a second. Let's see. Nightscapes. Now we did some nights with cities, but I'm talking about actual nightscapes, the night skies. I consider those landscape images because the idea is to include the landscape into it, but just under different light, because remember, it is all about light. This is turret arch. Now, when I'm giving this lecture up north, if I say it quickly, like we would here in Georgia, as quick as you can, it's turret arch. And I get this look like, why would they name an arch turret arch? And I said, because it looks like a turret. And they said, you mean turret? And I'm, yes, turret arch, excuse me. So this is turret arch with the Milky Way, the galactic core above it. You can see the air glow behind it to the right as well. Basic settings for night sky photography. Put your camera in manual mode, ISO 3200, 30-second exposure, and then start at about 30 seconds. That's with a 24 millimeter lens roughly. If it's too bright, first reduce your shutter speed down to like 20 seconds. If it's still too bright, then reduce your ISO. Cameras nowadays can handle the noise really well, but those are good starting points. Manual focus, mirrorless cameras are the way to go. You can zoom in on a star, move your manual focus back and forth. When you see the star get big and then small, then big, get it to where it's just a fine point of light, and then it's in focus. This is a boat down at 2 Mile in Apalachicola. This is one of the boats they removed. Thank you, Florida. Balanced rock. And this is the Donna Cay that they just removed last year. Such a cool place to photograph. And I love photographing in the fall. I was really happy to see that you guys are doing August, September for the night sky stuff, because I don't stay up late very well. So in the fall is when the galactic core is visible closest to sunset. So it makes it easier to do it. It's in the southern sky, so it's always easy to do it that way. This is a juniper tree in Arches National Park. And this is from the GNPA Expo down on Driftwood Beach. That bright light is just the center of Jekyll Island. So add people to your landscape images. If you're going to ever try to do this for a living, it becomes very, very marketable to have someone in your frame, because automatically the viewer wants to be that person. One image that I've always wanted to get is looking at Turret Arch through North Window Arch at sunrise. There's a ledge that's on the other side of North Window, excuse me, and it's about 3 feet wide or so by about 6 feet. So they tell you if you're going to get there to photograph, you got to get there early. So Cecil Holmes and I went out 4 hours before sunrise. Nobody was there. We're celebrating. Hour before sunrise, nobody's there. We're still happy. We've got the ledge to ourselves. We actually took a nap because you'd be able to hear anybody that walks near you. And you're up about as high as the ceiling in the room here. So then 15 minutes before sunrise, 400 of our closest friends showed up, and they all decided to stand in the middle of the arch. I have no idea why, but that's the world we live in today. I was really frustrated. I'm serious. I was as close to crying as I've ever been. I was going to need a donut for sure. So the sun rose, the light was working its way down the turret arch behind it. And when the light got to a point where it was perfect for photography, everyone left. I wasn't going to say, where are y'all going? Come back. You need to ruin it for the entire day. Come back. We didn't, but then one person showed up and they stood there for their Instagram feed. And I realized I wanted her to stay for one more frame. So I yelled over to her and she apologized for being in the frame. I said, do me a favor, stand there just like you were, because I want to capture an image of you, because to me, it really makes the image. So after she did it, I yelled over and said, hey, what's your name and your email address? I'd love to send you the picture. She yelled to me and I yelled back to make sure I had it right. And so I sent it to her and she sent me back a really nice note thanking me. But that image is so much more marketable than the other image, because so many people have this frame, but not many people have that frame. Actually, 2 people have that frame, Cecil and I, and that's it. But to me, it's also something that, we're part of the problem at this point, because we're wanting the tens of thousands of people to be that person in the frame. So there's 400 people at sunrise probably saw a picture standing in the arch and they decided they wanted to be that person. The Triangle Expo, we do our workshop every year in January and in May. I've been going there for a lot of years. I feel like I'm part of their family. They asked me to go there in May of 2020 during COVID to photograph for all their promotional photography. And so they arranged like wranglers and guests to ride horses. And I just simply told them where I wanted them to be in the image. So this was one of the images that I did. Just, I would want to go ride horses, even if I was, scared of horses. I would gonna want to go ride it after this. So it just is to me, it's one of my favorite images I did. Another one, they offer river trips, whitewater rafting. And so the people that own the ranch, they used one of their guides to take me down the river behind the raft with all the people in it. And I just simply photographed them at different points. And the light was absolutely perfect, hitting the guide in the raft, and then the mountain itself was just perfect. Excuse me. And this is the lodge at the ranch. So if you think I'm trying to get you to come to the ranch with me, absolutely I am. We do workshops in January and May. January is full. May we have some open space. Just come see me later. So intentional camera movement. A couple things you need for intentional camera movement: strong vertical or horizontal lines. I use a tripod for it so I can move it up and down. The other thing that you need is a lot of coffee, so you're jittery. And oops, that's the wrong way, sorry. Strong vertical lines, a lot of coffee. So aspens in the snow, just 1 second exposure, just moving the camera, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. And I just hold the shutter button down and just keep moving. And then I evaluate all the frames at the end of it and find the ones that I like the best. But I have found that typically minimum 0.4 seconds, 1/3 of a second to 1 second, give you the best exposures. And I love the birch and aspen trees. This is in a place called Tate's Hell outside of Apalachicola, Florida. And they had just done some burning on the pines the year before. So they have the palmetto in the foreground beneath the trees with the burned bases, and then the nice strong vertical lines. And this was from this last trip we just got back. This is some aspen trees just starting to get green foliage on it. So ideally with landscapes, we want to have pretty pictures. Sometimes it's all about the light. Again, the photographers that say there's no such thing as bad light, I challenge them to go out with me sometime and I'll show them why it's bad light. This is Arabia Mountain at sunrise. If you've ever been to Arabia Mountain, it's not a place that you typically think of as a great landscape location. This is Boulder Beach and Otter Cliff. My favorite thing about this is that one band of light that just hit those rocks, not in front of it, not above it, but just that one band of rocks. Cloudland Canyon. I usually put this one in there because it's during a rain, and I photograph waterfalls primarily in the rain. But the other reason is because I walked 4,000 sets of steps to get to this stupid waterfall. So I'm going to show this image any chance I get. But if you also notice what I talked about earlier, that attention to detail, whoops, leaving that little bit of space between the rock and the waterfall itself, so it doesn't merge together. So one of my teachers was Art Wolf, and Art Wolf did a book years ago called Light on the Land. And I look at that book often because Art's use of light on a landscape image is second to none. He knows how to take a paintbrush and just dab the landscape with sunlight. And I've always tried to emulate that in my work. And with this is a Dead Horse Point. There's enough shadow detail to see where you're at or what you're doing, but that nice little warm light, that last light of the day, just hitting the tops of these mesas, just give it just a totally different look altogether. This is Diamond Beach in Iceland. This is at sunset. George, this is the trip you were on, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah. There's another shot from Diamond Beach. Talk about those leading lines. I love to do 1 second exposures on the beach because that water, as it rushes out, forms those nice leading lines for you. You have to be really careful photographing on this beach because each of those chunks of ice are minimum 200 pounds. A lot of them are 500, 2,000 pounds. When a big wave comes in, it can knock you down very easily. Or if a big wave goes in, as it's going out, it can suck your feet into the soft sand, you can fall down, lose your camera gear. Oops, wrong way. One more image from Diamond Beach. When you go in February or March, especially February, the sun never gets high in the sky. So you can literally photograph 4 hours of sunrise, and then you have an hour to go get lunch, and then you've got 4 hours of sunset. So just a great time of year to photograph the beach like this. Now, a lot of times you never see the sky. It can be cloudy, it can be snow, it can be rain, it can be anything. But we've been pretty lucky getting over there and getting some good chances at it. Jekyll Beach again, Driftwood Beach on Jekyll Island. So this is an image that I don't think you can make anymore, or currently you can't make. This is at a place in Grand Teton National Park. All these lupine are at a little reservoir area off of Pilgrim Creek Road. And the problem now is there's so many more grizzly bears that are there. They closed Pilgrim Creek Road before the lupine are blooming. So this was about 7 or 8 years ago before they started closing the road really early. But you can see that when the conditions are right, it's absolutely phenomenal. So, and this is the last year they had that before they actually closed the road off to visitors. Oop, I keep going the wrong way there, sorry. Some of the ice caves on in Iceland. This one was the most torturous outing I think I've had. It was worse than the 4,000 steps at Cloudland Canyon, because obviously there's some type of language barrier between Icelandic and English, because our guide, we showed up and he said, it's 3 kilometers round trip. I'm taking every piece of camera gear I've got. So my backpack was easily 30 pounds. So we got about a mile or a kilometer into this hike. And he said, okay, you guys need to put your snow cleats on. Cool. I said, half a kilometer, I can do this. Spikes this big on the bottom of your cleats. We start hiking. 15, 20, 30 minutes later, we're in the middle of a glacier. There's nothing visible. His name was Oli. I said, Oli, 3 kilometers round trip. We've gone easily 2.5 kilometers. He goes, I meant 3 miles each way. Am I lying, George? And I kid you not, it was uphill both ways, because we started hiking and we're going up and I've got video of it because I'm looking at Cecil, we videoed it. I was like, well, the redeeming factor is that this has been all uphill. When we come back, we're going to be going downhill. And we started going uphill. And I was like, how is this possible? And then we got to the top of the glacier and I looked down and you can see this little tiny white dot. And I went, Oli, is that the van? And he goes, yes. And I'm like, it's still 1.5 miles away. And that was the downhill part. But I was so sore. We got back to our hotel and you can't run out of hot water there because it's all geothermal. I just sat in the shower probably for 40 minutes. Just, I felt so cheated. Just, I was absolutely exhausted. But the last time we went, our guide told us on the ice cave you'll see here, he said it's 1 mile each way. And I said, Thor, you Icelandic people don't know your distances. I want you to prove to me it's 1 mile. I said, if it's more than 1 mile, you carry my crap, plain and simple. And he goes, it's 1 mile. It really was. Thor at least knew, because I think the threat of having to carry all my crap maybe got him to realize that we were serious. But it was beautiful. The thing is, if you ever go to Iceland, I strongly recommend, especially the first time, going with a guide or a workshop group. The reason being, Iceland is known for dramatic weather changes. You never know what's going to happen. Having a guide can really help you navigate through all that stuff. But with this particular ice cave, it was the only ice cave that was open on the entire island, except for by helicopter or by Jeep. So in order to get there before everybody else, Thor said, we should leave at 7 o'clock. And I said, let's leave at 6 o'clock. No one's gonna complain. We got there too early. So we hiked out. We were the first people there. We had the cave to ourselves for over an hour. 3 more people showed up. We moved to the cave beside it. We started photographing. We were finished. We started hiking back. We passed well over 200 people in the next mile. So literally by the time they all got there, there's no way you could have gotten a picture of the cave. It would have been impossible. But a couple of the different angles of the cave itself, whoop, keep going the wrong way. These are all 9-frame HDRs put together, just low saturation. I like to take people to iconic locations because if you've never been there, it's only iconic to you because you've seen someone else's image of it. So if I can help you get that image, I will. We do that on the workshops. Then we start to look for the abnormal stuff, the different things. You guys have all been to Minnehaha, I would guess. What's that? Yep, the one in Minnesota as well, yeah. This is a Cunningham Cabin. This is across the street from the Triangle X Ranch. This is all about the light. This is Mount Rundle in Banff National Park at the Vermilion Lakes. It had snowed the day before, and I was hoping to go out and get some really nice color reflections in the lake. But as soon as I saw the wind pick up and start to blow the snow off the top and be backlit, it looked like, fire coming off the mountain. Pado Lake, prior to sunrise, and just as the light dances on the peaks. This is Moraine Lake, famous place called the Rock Pile. Usually when you go to the Rock Pile, there's 15, 20, 30 people there. I was the only person there. Couldn't figure out why. Photographed it. The sun came up, got some beautiful stuff, walked down. Then there was a big sign there that said, area closed, Sal and 2 cubs in the area. I had come up a different trail and there wasn't a sign. So luckily I carried bear spray with me. Well, luckily I didn't see the bears, but this is in Reina Sfarja, Black Sand Beach. These are some of the basalt cliffs. This is about an hour after sunrise. The light comes up and it just never goes above 15 or 20 degrees over the horizon. So these next images are why I get to a place early and why I stay late or till it's finished. This was a workshop we did at Schwabacher's Landing or in Grand Teton. This was workshop session 1, day 1. And when I do a workshop, I tell people, this is the f-stop that I'm using, this is the shutter speed, this is why I do it. This particular morning, I said, I'll explain everything afterward because it's gonna happen so fast, you're not gonna have time to think about it. So I said, I'm gonna call out the shutter speeds, I'm gonna call out the apertures. At the end of it, we'll explain why. So this is what they were all seeing. They all thought I was just out of my mind, but I told them, I said, we've got high clouds and we've got cloud inversion. And they had no idea what I was talking about. So the light came over the horizon, lit up the peak, lit up the clouds above the mountain. I was literally having to go around because I mean, just imagine having never seen the Tetons and this is the first time you see them. I literally was having to tell people, do me a favor, press your shutter button because you're really going to regret not doing it. I was pushing the shutter button for some people and then they were all ready to pack up. I said, no, stay still. It gets better. So then a couple minutes later, as the light hit the peaks a little bit more, the reflection got more intense. They were ready to pack it up. No. Sunrise number 2, the cloud inversion lights up. So you got the light on the peaks, you've got the cloud inversion turning pink. Then you just beautiful reflection. They're ready to pack it up. I said, let's just stick around a few more minutes. And this is what you get. So get there early, be patient. It doesn't always happen, but it does most of the time for you. Apalachicola is a 9-frame panoramic. It had been pouring, but the apps that I used said it was going to break right at sunrise. I went ahead and got up. I drove over from St. George Island, and boy, I'm glad I did. This is a wave at Shore Acres Park outside of Coos Bay, Oregon. If you look to the right of the image, you see those people that are standing there. That wave is 300 feet tall. Snake River Overlook in Grand Teton National Park. Excuse me. These are some of the horses at the ranch that I photographed. I just had goosebumps as I'm photographing them. It just, it's just unreal to witness it. A double rainbow over balanced rock. I use a couple different weather apps. I use Clear Outside as one of them. My favorite new app that I use is called Ventusky, Ventusky. The free version of it doesn't give you all the options. For $3.95, I think it is, it gives you predictions on the clouds, the levels, the wind, the temperature, the moisture, the precipitation, everything. It's the most accurate app that I found as of yet. So Ventusky. This is a handheld 12-frame panoramic. I just turned at the hip when I had the camera in vertical mode, portrait mode. This is the main road on Ossabaw Island. Just that light touching the Spanish moss. This is in Iceland. This is in Vik. Just a slower shutter speed, a quarter of a second, to get that movement in the wave with the sea stacks behind it. Gibbs Garden. I get to cheat at Gibbs Garden and I get people mad at me because I get to go in there before they open the gates. So a lot of this stuff you can't get unless you have access to it beforehand, or if you get there right away and you run to a spot. But for me, it's my favorite time because I don't have to deal with, 50, 60 people running around. I can just sit down and actually enjoy the gardens. This is the first time I ever got there in the fall. I've never been there because I've always been out of town. Whoops. Wrong button again. So photographing northern lights, very similar to the night sky, except your exposure is going to be a lot less. This night we had a full moon. Our exposures were about 5 seconds at 1000 ISO, 1600 ISO, somewhere around there. But it was just incredible. We could actually see the lights dancing. These are some images to my last trip that I just got back from last week. This is the Blacktail Ponds overlook. When you can't see the mountain peaks or there's not dramatic light, I love this overlook because there's so much in the foreground. All the other ones, it's typically just a view of the mountains. This gives you a lot to look at in the foreground. This is a place that very few people can get to. It's where the movie Spencer's Mountain was filmed. And it's part of the Triangle X Ranch. So you can get there, but you have to hike about a mile. Or if you stay at the Triangle X Ranch, you can drive right up to it. If they give you the combination, which they give our groups the combination to the lock. So this past time when we were at Schwabacher's, we didn't have that cloud inversion, but we had fog moving in. And a lot of people left because there was some snow that the fog was being caused by. And people were leaving, but we wanted to see just what would happen. And as the fog got to a point, you would just see the peaks of the mountain and the reflection and the actual light itself. So I go to the same place over and over and over, hundreds of times, because every time I go, it's going to be different. The light is going to be different. The elements may be the same, but the light can always be different. So with that, thank you guys very much. I'll leave my contact information up. Anyone in the room have questions? How do we find out if anyone online has some? There's some stuff in the chat. Let's see what that says. Windstream, blame it on Windstream. See, Richard, that's why I'm on the list for Starlink.
What lenses are you using? Are you just using Tamron? Because I'm just assuming they have to be well weather sealed.
Yes, all the Tamron lenses. Now, I shoot mirrorless cameras now. I shoot all Sony. Sony's bodies are weather sealed, number one, but Tamron's lenses are all weather sealed, and the construction keeps out moisture, keeps out dust. They're super lenses. I mean, I don't get paid to endorse their lenses, but honestly, when they went to mirrorless, they completely redesigned everything they had to make them lighter, smaller, but not sacrifice any of the quality. And if you look, you you can pretty much see that their lenses rank, as high, if not higher than most of the lenses out there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I was
I shoot
wondering,
all Tamron. I've got Tamron all the way from 17 millimeters to 500 millimeters on full frame, and then crop sensor 11 millimeters all the way up to 300 millimeters for crop sensor.
so do you take what like for Canon, it would be like a 15 to 35, 24 to 70 and 70 to 200, or do you use a longer range than a 200?
For Canon,
Well, I don't know what the Sony comparison to that would be in like.
so what I do
Tamron.
for my next trip to Alaska, I'm taking 3 lenses. One lens is a 28 to 200. One lens is a 35 to 150. On the wide end, it's f2, so that's why I was taking it. And then a 150 to 500. So I decide on the lenses as to where I'm going and what I think I'll need. In Alaska, I'm not going to have the foreground elements for landscapes, whereas in the Tetons I do. So the difference would be I would take a 17 to 28 there for a lot of that decompression with the ultra wide lens. Does that help?
That helps. All right,
Right.
thank you. Oh, and
Sure.
simplify, by the way.
Oh, simplify. Oh, okay, so someone says they only see the files. We fix that. Any questions here? I know I
You
didn't
said you were
answer-
you said you were taking a 35 to 150 or 150 to 500. What was the first one?
It's a 28 to 200. So the reasoning behind that is part of what I'll do is I'm going to be on a helicopter flying up to the top of a glacier, and then we're going to do some dog sledding. And, number one, I don't want to make the dog suffer, A, dragging me, but B, dragging a big camera bag and stuff. So having just that 28-200, I've got the versatility of everything I need. Plus I don't have to worry about changing lenses while I'm flying in a helicopter. So that's why I double up in that range. Anything else? There's a chat question, maybe. Let's see. Do I like
You
the
just
150
answered
to
mine.
Oh, yeah, the 150 to 500 versus the 150 to 600. They're 2 different animals. The 150 to 500, it's newer technology. It's lighter, it's smaller. I like it substantially better than the 150 to 600 because of all the new technology in it. To give you an idea, when that lens first came out a year ago, Tamron sent me an early version of it. My serial number is 132, if that gives you an idea of how early it was. And the idea of me getting up to Alaska a week early was to put it through a series of tests. And I tested it at the time with the A7R3, the A92, and the A6600. And I went to a beach where there was, easily 200 to 300 eagles. And I wanted to test birds in flight. And I literally shot in 4 hours over 12,000 frames, just testing the tracking and everything else on it. Now with digital SLRs, I usually had a 75 to 80% success rate. With that new 150 to 500 and the Sony tracking system, out of 12,000 frames, I had less than 100 that weren't sharp. And the majority of those were simply my nose touched the back of the screen. I had the touch sensitivity on and my nose moved the focus point. So, I can't blame the camera for that. It's amazing. I had always said that I would go mirrorless when mirrorless was able to do what digital SLRs can do with birds in flight. And honestly, it so far surpasses what digital SLRs could even think of doing. I could never go back to digital SLRs even. So Richard says, hey, David, we are hiring, want to photograph some school kids. Can you do me a favor, Richard, and just pull my fingernails out prior to each day that we would shoot the kids? So, Richard and I have been friends for a long time. So, any other questions?
Any questions in the room?
I'm going to turn it over to the man in charge.
One question.
Sure.
Do you still use your Nikon Z? Would you have a 7?
I've got a Z7. I do. Currently, my Z7 is on loan with Mark Whitney. He is over in Wyoming currently, and he was going to make the trip without a backup. And I said, take my camera. And he debated, and he went to Barry to have his camera cleaned. And Barry said, "Are you crazy? Take his camera, use it as backup." So Mark did. Okay. So, yeah, I love the Z7. I don't have the Z7 II. It's very disappointing for birds in flight, honestly. Sony is just beats them all. Canon R5s are pretty close.
I have a Canon R5. It's amazing for birds.
It really is. The Z9, I haven't ever used it. It's the best thing that Nikon's got, but when you compare it to Canon and Sony, it's the best thing that Nikon's got.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and hopefully start the photo challenge. So, does everybody in the room have a ballot? I know some people came in late.
So while Mike's doing that, shameless plug, I did a calendar for Triangle X. If anyone is interested in the calendars, I just simply split it with them. They're $20. They're a 16-month calendar. So it's what, $1.25 a month, something like that. I wasn't a good mathematician, so. But if anyone's interested, I've got some of those up here. 16 months, yes. Oh, well, now it goes from September of this year.
All right. Folks at home, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the screen with the monthly themes? Are you seeing a split screen?
We're
We
seeing
just
the
see the monthly
themes.
challenge stream.
Okay, so you're seeing what you're supposed to see. I told you we'd figure out how to do this eventually. So Lisa is in Colorado this week, so I'm running the photo challenge. She may be online, I don't know. She was going to try, but she was in Silverton and the connection there isn't great, so I don't know if she's online or not. But these are our monthly themes. Our theme for June is perspective. We actually switched out June and October because we're gonna eventually do composite, but we wanted to do a workshop on composites first because not everybody knows how to do that. So the rules, it's one image per person. The image must be less than 2 years old. For most challenges, no composites. When we do the composite theme, obviously that'll be allowed. You do need to be a paid member. You must be at the meeting either in person or online, but we will allow you to enter an image one time, even if you're going to miss the meeting. We know life happens. We give points out for the top 5 finishers each month. We add them up at the end of the year. The person with the most points is the photographer of the year, and they win $100, free membership for the following year, and a nifty little trophy. So the folks at home, folks here have ballots. Folks at home will be able to email your votes. You're going to vote by the number on the ballot for first, second, and third place. Don't vote for more than 3 images. Don't vote for the same photo multiple times. There you go. I think it's more than one. I think they're sticking together. So when you're voting, think of whether or not the pictures match the theme. This month's theme is perspective, and the points, 5 points for first place, 4 points for second place, 3 points for third, and so on. You'll vote for 3 pictures. We have 9 entries this month. We'll go through it 3 times. Oh, and you email your votes to vote@ngaphoto.club, not .com, but vote@ngaphoto.club. Okay, so this is number 1. Just the share button. Can I move that down?
How many pictures of it?
It's gonna be 9 images. Yeah. All right, so this is number 1. Number 2. Three. 4. 5. Whoops. 5. 6. 7. 8. And 9. Is this band at the bottom blocking people's view? We maybe move it up. Perspective. Yeah. So we will go backwards now. Number 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. And 1. We'll do it one more time, a little bit faster. So here's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the folks who are here, go ahead and fill out your ballots and we'll collect them. The folks who are at home, send your votes to vote@ngaphoto.club. Again, not .com, but ngaphoto.club. It is 8:45. Lisa is going to tally the votes that are emailed. I'll tally the votes that are here. So I'd say if you're at home, get your votes to the to that address by 9:15. That gives you 30 minutes to vote. Plenty of time. Our next meeting is going to be here at the Bowen on July 15th at 7 p.m. Our presentation is going to be Jeff Milstein, and it's going to be on travel photography beyond the snapshot. And our photo challenge theme next month is power. And that's it. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. A little bit smoother tonight. Maybe next month we'll have no issues. But thank you, everybody here in person, everybody at home. It was a great presentation. Thank you, David. And we will see you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could have cheated.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were stuck together.
Sorry.